Good afternoon, everyone. I am glad you were able to join us today on such short notice for our first value-added PAN presentation, Sports in the Era of COVID. Since there is so much going on in the world and we have become accustomed to Zoom meetings and conferences, our PAN Advisory Committee agreed that coordinating an added value presentation on relevant topics throughout the year would allow us to continue our engagement with you. So as the world continues to evolve, we will evolve along with it and keep you updated on how we plan to meet our commitments with our PAN members and hope that you will renew your membership for 2021. And for those of you who have attended our Zoom webinars as a guest, we hope that you have benefited from our presentations and see the value of becoming a member of Mptf's Professional Advisory Network. But before we get to the presentation, I want to just go over a few housekeeping items for you. Today's presentation does qualify for CPE credit, and I will email those certs to you by the end of the week. Many have asked if this webinar will be recorded, and yes, it will. So if you need to jump off early for some reason, you can just send me an email and I will send you the recording. And throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, just use the Q&A portal, and if time permits, we will hopefully be able to answer those. And also please mark your calendars for October 28th. That's our fourth quarter PAN presentation on the political landscape discussion on the 2020 presidential election. So I'll be sending out more information on that as well. So now I'm just going to throw it over to Courtney Bailey, our Mptf Chief Development Officer.
Hi, everybody. I know you probably got the behind the screen and we're hearing us chat a little bit, but that's the fun of Zoom. We're at home. This is raw and real, and as Kathy said, this is an added value presentation, which I'm so excited to kind of go a little bit outside of our box and hear from two incredibly fantastic people, moderated by our very own Chung Che. And I wanted to just very quickly give you a couple Mptf updates. We have some dates to share with you that we hope you can virtually join. Of course, we're not back into that time where we will be seeing each other, hopefully sooner rather than later. But we have Real Stories, Real Lives. It's our mission event. It's an easy date, 10/20/20. On October 20th, we are doing our mission event, which is normally held at the DGA, and it's normally a ticketed event. It's a fundraiser for us, but it's a lower ticketed event because it's really to help spread awareness of our message. This year, we don't have tickets. We want you to share this. We want you to show up. If you don't know Mptf, or if you've been at this event before, the conversation prior to the event as opposed to after is night and day different, because you come, it's just a normal mixer, you hear the stories of our services, and then you really understand our mission. So without being too self-serving, sometimes we have to, because we need your support more than ever, and we just want people to know who we are. First and foremost, that we are here to serve and help. And second, that if we can get support and reach a wide audience, that's the best thing for our organization. So it's on October 20th. It will be at 6:30 p.m. We're streaming it on our YouTube and our Facebook channel. You don't have to register. You can go online and simply get updates about the event. It's being hosted by Hugh Jackman. We have 2 of our 3 readers confirmed, and they read stories of services. Very exciting, Angela Bassett and Jason Bateman. So we have a fantastic lineup. We are also holding a virtual event called Day at the Games. It used to be Day at the Races, but we all know what happened to horse racing, and there was the drama around there, so we changed it to Day at the Lanes, bowling. We're not bowling this year in person. So this is a Day at the Games. It's virtual. And there will be an auction as well that is going to be held on November 7th. I don't have to let you all know that the need is greater than it's ever been for support. Many people will be losing insurance at the beginning of the year in our industry, as well as needing help as we navigate these surreal waters and hopefully get back to some semblance of normalcy. We are also, we have a phone call right now. It's probably the president, but I'm not going to answer it. We also are doing a webinar to provide assistance for assistance and the like, below the line workers. We are doing 3 total webinars. We've already done 1. Stay tuned for those. We'd love for you to be third-party advocates to get it out to people who you think might benefit from this topic. We're talking about financial literacy. We're talking about career help, volunteering and being of service, because even when you might be at your lowest time, there's nothing like that soul fulfilling job of being of service to somebody else. And also caregiving. Many of us are taking care of either aging parents, young children. So we're gonna hit all those topics, but without further ado, I get the pleasure of introducing our guests. And I'm so excited. First, we have Renata Simril, who is the president and CEO of the LA84 Foundation, as well as president of the Play Equity Fund. I'm not gonna get into that because you'll hear about that. Fantastic. And obviously LA84, 1984, when we held the Olympics here, that was the genesis of this foundation. And she has more than 25 years of diversified experience in the civic and private sector. She was previously SVP and Chief of Staff to the publisher of the LA Times. She spent 3 seasons with the Dodgers as SVP of External Affairs, completely rebranded, brought new life and energy to that organization. Nicole Whiteman, who's now running it, fantastic, because Renata leaves a trail of excellence. And she currently serves on the boards of the United Way, Greater Los Angeles, the LA 2028 Olympic Bid Committee, the LASCC, which is the LA Sports and Entertainment Commission, and the Dodgers Foundation. And she's a dear friend and a wealth of information. Then we have Sean Farnham, who I met in college when we were both student athletes. I played soccer with his wife. He is an ESPN sports analyst. He got his start in radio, paid his dues, as so many people do. He contributes to SportsCenter, to Get Up, to First Take. He is incredibly philanthropic and generous. He's a parent, just like Renata is, and he works with Coaches versus Cancer, the V Foundation. Just an incredible human being, and this is who you get to hear from today. It's a little bit out of the box, but sports and entertainment are very, very similar, as you will hear, and we're so honored to have them. And without further ado, here is Chung, our moderator. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Courtney. I'm excited to talk to both Sean and Renata, and talking with them earlier. They just had wonderful things to say and talk about various issues. So without any delay, let's begin. I wanted to ask both of you, what are each of you currently doing during this pandemic, and what projects are you currently involved in?
Yeah, thanks, Chang, and thanks, Courtney and Kathy, for inviting me to be with all of you this afternoon. The LA84 Foundation is a grant maker. We support youth sports organizations throughout Southern California, and the Play Equity Fund was established by the LA84 Foundation to scale and continue that work, but more on the advocacy side of the equation. And certainly, like professional sports, youth sports has really been shut down because of COVID-19. And so we've been doing 2 things. One, pivoting our work and figuring out ways in which we can keep kids active during home confinement and stay-at-home protocols. And so we shifted our work to distribute play equipment directly in the hands of young people through both the Catholic schools and LAUSD. And over the last 6 months or so, we've distributed 120,000 pieces of play equipment. And we've accompanied those with videos from our athlete friends and Olympic friends, really inspiring kids to stay active and stay strong. Certainly, sports has that ability to bring a tribe together. It's that safe space, that that positive mode of engagement for young people. But it's also a place where you can be healthy physically and both mentally. And certainly, the stress of health concerns, economic concerns over COVID-19. The importance of movement and play is critical at these times. And so we've pivoted our work to make sure we're getting those play equipment, and inspiring our young people through videos from our athletes and from our Olympic friends. On the Play Equity Fund side, we've been really busy standing up a relatively new nonprofit organization focused on play as a social justice issue. We established this nonprofit organization several years ago, and we're planning to launch, and sort of reveal the organization this year. And certainly play as a social justice issue was something that we had to educate the audiences on. And the results of, the global protests around George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many other African Americans, losing their lives at the hands of, a few, bad seeds within the law enforcement. The 11 professional sports teams came together to really ensure that this moment turned into a movement, and that they were able to respond in a way that supports Black communities in particular, but community of colors in general, around leveling the playing field so that we start to see more access and engagement in sport, but more importantly, that we started to see diversity within the front office. And so we're managing through the Play Equity Fund a partnership with the Alliance LA, is what they've called themselves, over a 5-year period of time to stand up sport for social justice, engaging high school athletes and really exposing them to careers in sport. Certainly a number of the communities that we serve, kids aspire to be an NFL player or a basketball player. Not everybody's going to be a LeBron or a Sean Donald or Sam Donald, but certainly they have the capacity to be a CEO, to be a CFO, to be a law person or a production person within the sports teams. And so we're going to work to really stand up a cohort of kids who wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to aspire to careers in sports. So notwithstanding the moment that we're in, the time we're in, we've been very busy and proud of the way we've been able to continue to support and make positive impacts in the communities that we serve.
Wow. That's a lot more than I've been doing.
That's why I'm tired. Every time I talk about it, Sean, I get tired.
I mean, I've been more involved with the book that's on the back shelf of Renata's house, which is Fortnite. I'm no longer a noob, as my kids would say. I'm much better at the game now to try to help out my 9-year-old. No, in all actuality, I've been doing a lot of just investment in my kids. I've figured out I'm a very average 3rd grade teacher. I'm a much better college basketball analyst than I am a 3rd grade teacher within distance learning. My son will desperately fail Common Core, but will have long division down and be able to carry the 1. So that's been a big point of emphasis for me. Been involved with Coaches versus Cancer a lot lately. In August, we were still able to actually go to Las Vegas and run a golf tournament there, which raised over $1.5 million. And then just this last week, I did a virtual fundraiser for Coaches versus Cancer Tennessee, and we were able to raise $230,000. So cancer research and lost in the COVID is those numbers. Going to be 1.8 million people are going to find out they have cancer this year. 700,000 Americans are going to die of cancer this year. And those numbers are staggering, and they're likely to go up because a lot of people have been so fearful with the COVID and the restrictions of everything. Some people have been very limited to get some of those early detection things that are so important to try to combat that disease. I lost my father-in-law in November of 2018, and for the last 6 years, this has been any way I can help out. Cancer research has been a big part of my life, and so I've done that. Outside of that, I've done a lot of trying to do individual safe precautionary training with kids that are missing out right now on playing their sport in basketball. I do a socially distanced workout and make sure everybody's safe protocol distance and make sure we're following all guidelines and limit, it's usually a one-on-one interaction with me to try to help kids continue along their passion in sports. And outside of that, I'm getting geared up for the fact that the NCAA announced that college basketball will be coming back on November 25th. And waiting to see what this is exactly going to look like. Unlike any other year we've ever seen in college sports, there is no schedule for any basketball team as of right now. They have no clue what the schedule is going to look like. They have no clue where they're going to be playing, if they're going to be bubbling, where those bubbles are going to be located, what bubble they're going to be participating in. So there's such a great deal of uncertainty right now in college basketball, which therefore creates a lot of uncertainty in my profession and for me. But with that being said, very honored to be here. Excited to have the opportunity to talk with all of you and hopefully have some fun.
Thank you, Sean and Renata. I wanted to personally thank you, Sean, because I know I can't think of anybody whose lives haven't been affected by cancer. And we just thank you for all your efforts in raising funds for cancer research. Let's start with you, Sean. Sean, as a former college athlete and now basketball analyst, what is your view on college athletics, be it basketball, football, or any other sport, and whether they should be going on during this pandemic?
I think that they should. I do think we should be playing. Now, I was on set the night that Rudy Gobert tested positive in the NBA and that the NBA started to postpone their season. And Scott Van Pelt was hosting Sports Center. It was in the middle of championship week, and North Carolina was playing Syracuse. And I'll never forget sitting on the set doing halftime of that game. And I'm looking at the monitor, and my producer comes to my ear and goes, "Hey, Sean, what do you think North Carolina has to do here in the second half?" And meanwhile, I look at the lower left hand because we have this big bank of all these different televisions. And I look at the one in the lower left that says NBA season postponed. And I said, I don't think it's going to matter what North Carolina does in the second half. I think we're done. And shortly thereafter, I got called over to Scott Van Pelt's show. And he asked me what I thought the ramifications or the fallout were going to be from this test of positive for Rudy Gobert and how that was going to impact college athletics. And I said, I think we've seen our last college basketball game of the year. I didn't want it to be that way, but I knew from speaking from my mind and my heart that it was so many unknowns that there's no way you could risk it. I think we've learned a lot of information since then. And I think that some of the rapid testing that we're now seeing being implemented across the landscape of college athletics overall, is going to be imperative for a return to play. We've seen it, I think, a very successful start to the college football season. That doesn't mean that there hasn't been hiccups, that there haven't been games that have been postponed. But I think, unfortunately, this virus is here. I just had my physical last week, and the doctor told me, he's like, listen, you can lock it down for a long, long time. The virus is still going to be around. We have to learn how to manage it. We have to learn how to put the necessary precautions and the safety in to make sure that we are protecting these student athletes. But the window of opportunity for them to be successful and do something that they are very passionate about, whether it's an Olympic sport or whether it's a money-making, generating revenue like football or like basketball. And make no mistake about it, the reason why there's been a major push to come back and play is because of the financial losses. The NCAA tournament lost $300 million by not happening last March. If the college football season was not to go off right now, you would see massive cuts across the country in athletic departments. And I think we're still trending in that direction. I think you're going to see a ton of sports cut. But I do think a return to play in a safe way with the right protocols put in place can be successful. And I think that the start of the college football season has been pretty good so far. I think, there's a lot of fingers crossed that it's going to continue that way. I was very happy to see the Pac-12 reverse course and announce that they will come back in November. I think they should come back. They should have come back in late October, a couple weeks forward. Ahead of that, I think would have made more sense. But the return to play for them, the Mountain West Conference, as well as the Big Ten, all reversing course to join the Big 12, ACC, American, and the SEC, I think it's good. But everybody needs to look at it on a geographical footprint. While there can be fans or limited fans in certain areas right now because of the virus and how low it is in there, that's great. In other areas, there's not going to be fans. That's okay too. And this is our new norm until we can get past this and over the hurdle of COVID-19.
As a follow-up to that question, Sean, and I also want to bring in Renata because I know she's involved with youth athletics as well. What's your view, if anything, differ with respect to like high school athletics or even just young kids playing various sports, whether it's AYSO or anything else?
I'm very concerned for the youth of today. I'm very concerned for the kids that are high school age and below. And I'm a parent. I have 3 kids, and all 3 of my kids play sports. But I'm seeing the mental toll that it is taking on them, the depression that is sitting in that is very real, the anxiety that has been created. They're expected to be learning at a normal level, which it's impossible when you're not inside the classroom. And youth sports is an outlet of physical health, mental health. As Renata was talking about earlier, it's imperative for the mental aspect of it. The infection rate isn't high amongst kids. However, the spread rate can be. And I think that that's where the biggest concern comes in, is how do you try to navigate what is best for a group that is not at risk, but at a group that is desperately in need of experiences of life that are going to help mature them and grow them and allow them to become whole, intermixed in with the threat that they could become spreaders of COVID-19 to their family members, their grandparents, and people that are at home. So it is a very slippery slope. But my feeling on it is I do think that we need to find a way that we can at least re-engage some athletics, some movement within youth sports because of what I'm seeing, not only at my own house, but talking to kids and being a mentor to a lot of high school kids and people that I work with. The mental ramifications, the anxiety and the depression is very real amongst teenagers right now. And that is a big, big concern of mine moving forward.
Yeah, and Chang, I'm a huge sports fan, and the fact that sports is back, both at professional and college level, brings excitement to me. But I think, it's not all sports are created equal in this COVID environment. I think what the NBA has done by creating a bubble is a demonstration of the lengths that you need to go to make sure that you're protecting. And Sean, notwithstanding, football coming back, I think it was just reported today that Notre Dame, 18 of their athletes tested positive. So if you're not able to really impart upon the athletes at the college and the professional levels of, just proper distance, wearing your mask, safe distance, just the protocols that you need to take in terms of, minimizing the spread, I think that it sends the wrong message to young people that while professional sports is back, then we can play. And I think, Sean, you're absolutely right. While the infection rate is low amongst, 18 and below, the infection rate, the spread rate is incredibly high, and they can take that back, and you got community spread, and we're not able to, sort of arrest this in the way that we can. And, I think you're also right in that we've got to find a way to have a new normal. And my sense of sports coming back should be those sports that we, from a youth perspective, that we can still enjoy proper distancing. When you think about fencing, when you think about soccer, when you think about basketball in a bubble, baseball to a certain degree, I think has been, hugely successful in their season. But just an all-out return. Golf is another, sport where you can practice social distance. It's actually been picking up golf as one of my projects in COVID-19. It's an outlet. So I think we need to be innovative but thoughtful at the same time of how do we adjust to our new normal, because COVID's going to be with us for a while. I mean, in the US, we've done a pathetic job of really tackling this pandemic. We're 5% of the global population, but we're 20% of the deaths. And we haven't even gotten to the cold season yet. So I think youth sports should come back very thoughtful, very slow, but certainly with regard to protocols. But we're not seeing that consistently across the country. I have colleagues in Chicago and in the Midwest and the South that, you didn't think anything was wrong. I mean, they've got their pony leagues and their travel leagues and their, baseball leagues playing as if, all is fine and there's fans in the stands. So I think that, I don't know the data points, but it could correspond to where we're seeing those increases in COVID cases because people aren't practicing protocols and being patient as we get through this rough patch and get back to, an opportunity where we can engage in sports activities in the way that we're used to and that we need to be. But I think patience and following the science is imperative.
If I could just tag on to what Renata was just saying too, is, I think where we've come from March 11th when Rudy Gobert tested positive to now is a large step forward. And to your point with the Notre Dame's athletic department, you could look at the Tennessee Titans. Their facility was shut down today inside the NFL because of multiple players and staff members testing positive. We've gotten to a point now where I think that people are comfortable with saying, okay, well, guess what? That means that the game against the Steelers this Sunday is probably not going to happen. And that's okay. That doesn't mean we have to shut down the whole league. And I think that in itself is a step forward with us understanding that we have to be okay as a society, as a professional league, sports run organizations, wherever we are, if there's an individual outbreak in a team for whatever reason, that there might be a postponement of a game and that game may not be made up, and that's just going to be the way that it is for this year. And as long as we get more and more comfortable with that, and I think we are, we'll be able to continue to move forward. But I would go back to the NBA did it better than anybody else.
Yep.
And the WNBA, both of them, the WNBA and the NBA did it better than anybody else with all the safety protocols and making sure that their athletes, coaches, and staff members were safe, and they've been able to work through it extremely well and put out a great product that I think a lot of people have been enjoying and watching.
Go Lakers.
Renata, given your diverse background with the Dodgers, the Los Angeles Times, the mayor's office, and in real estate development, what's your view on opening up of America during this pandemic, and what, if any way, is the right way to go about it?
Phew, that's a loaded question. Yeah, we have to follow the science. You know, I think the statistic I gave of 5% of the population to 20% of the deaths, this is real. You know, wearing your mask, washing your hands, safe distance, you know, wiping down surfaces. So I think first and foremost, it's following the science and engaging in proper protocols. And I think the more we as a country focus on that and are disciplined about that, you know, the sooner I think we can get back to opening the full economy. You know, I think the way in which California has done it, you know, as painful as it has been, you know, not being able to go to the nail salon or get my hair done, hence why it's in a bun. You know, I think that's the right thing to do, you know, to make sure that we're minimizing, you know, community spread. But not all communities are following the same proper protocols. And I think that's why we see, you know, sort of inconsistency, both in terms of the numbers and the opening of the economy. But look, in the context of sports, both at the youth level on the pay model or the pay to play model, and professional and collegiate sports, it's about economics. You know, this is the COVID recession is going to hit those who could least afford it the hardest. You know, we manage a small but sizable endowment, and you know, while the first couple of months of the year, you know, we were in that roller coaster ride. Most foundations, you know, haven't had really a dip. We're probably going to end at or just slightly below where we started the year from our endowment value. You know, stock market, you know, is there a COVID crisis? Is there a global pandemic? You know, you really don't see that, but it's the frontline workers, it's the restaurant workers, it's the ticket takers, it's the concession operators. You know, those are the ones that are sort of most hit and going to, you know, bear the brunt of this economic recession. But I think to your question, follow the science, practice safe protocols, you know, and pray that we get, you know, a treatment and or a virus, you know, through the FDA trials as quickly as we can. Because I think we're going to be with COVID-19 for the foreseeable future. And we've all got to learn to adjust to this new normal, which is today dealing with COVID-19, you know, not at some, you know, forward date that we can't even guess as to when that will be.
Sean and Renata, how do you know, I was sort of joking about this with some people, you know, saying that, you know, for some of these months, especially during the beginning, you know, I was searching the TV for sports to watch, and, you know, you can only watch so much of the 2016 Cornhole Championships. And so how do each of you view the role of sports during these difficult times, and whether or not it's vital for the general public at this time?
I personally think it's extremely vital. I think the role of sports and concerts are the only two areas in life where people come together and they don't care what your political party is. They don't care what your race or ethnicity is or religion. You come together and you celebrate, you cheer for your team. And whether it's the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Giants, the 49ers, whoever it is, Raiders, Rams, it doesn't even matter. If you go to one of those games, you're there. If you go to a concert to listen to a musician or go to a play or the fine arts, you're there to enjoy, and you don't care about anything that's going on. You don't look at anybody in that way. And I think sports are very important in that. I also think it's a rallying cry for communities. I think it's a sense of pride in their communities. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen in the return to sport has been a little bit of a rallying. I think to the economic side of it, though, what you're seeing is the return to sport is also very painful for a lot of people. In particular, I travel and do a lot of SEC games for college basketball. However, SEC, Southeastern Conference, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what the SEC stands for in sports, their football is a way of life. And yes, and their economics of all of these small towns, and it's amazing because you'll come off of this like 2-lane highway, you make a left, and there is just a massive stadium, and there's not another building that's over 3 stories tall anywhere in sight. And they sit 105,000 people in Death Valley down at LSU on a Saturday night for a football game. And they're out there 2 days early, and they're eating at restaurants, the hotels. And so there's a massive economic downfall in a lot of these cities that are painful for a lot of them to watch right now. They're happy that they appear to maybe be getting closer to having some people back. But there's a lot of small businesses that are being impacted in a very, very large way in a lot of these college town communities across the country.
And to add to that, Chang, you know, it's the lifeblood of the city of Los Angeles, just with Southern California is an example. I mean, we have 11 professional sports teams in Southern California. When you think about, you know, the revenue that's generated from our sports teams, the small businesses that are the restaurants, it is vastly impacting the city's tax coffers and cities across LA County that have an impact in the communities that we serve. So when you think about it, the city of Compton, because of the budget cuts, eliminated their entire parks department in a $4 million cost savings. And many cities throughout LA County are facing the same challenges, is how do we take less revenue against, you know, our, you know, even when you furlough your employees, but against our existing system, and really to be able to provide for the needs that our communities have. And when you think about the lack of opportunities that kids in the communities that we serve to have to play at school, you know, now you've got municipalities are renting their parks space to AYSO, to travel teams, to club teams, to adult leagues to generate revenue to offset the loss in large measure from sports and entertainment. That then limits the free space. So now we can play outside. Let me go to my park if I do have a park in my neighborhood, but now I can't get free park space because the city's using it to monetize, you know, its assets so they can generate revenue to offset the revenue loss. And so I think in addition to what Sean's saying, you know, it's critical to our economy. And so certainly I think we're seeing some recovery with sports coming back in Los Angeles, but, you know, not from the standpoint of actually driving revenues into the city coffers. And so I think it's, again, going back to the point of practicing safe protocols, you know, praying for a vaccine and treatment is critically important because the shoe has not dropped, and I'm not an optimistic person, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. When we think about the impact that you know, the lack of sports, the lack of shutting down the importance of shutting down the economy is having on our municipal governments and their ability to pay for some basics as parks programs, you know, in the communities that need the most.
Let's shift a little bit, and I appreciate your views on that. But I wanted to ask each of you, how do each of you view the current social unrest and the social justice movement and the role of sports in these important issues?
Well, I think this has been an empowering moment for athletes across the world, and maybe it harkens back to the Muhammad Ali era of boxing, but this has been one of the largest movements that we've seen from professional athletes, understanding that their platform is so much larger and that they're not just going to be seen as professional athletes, that they're going to be seen as people that want to get out into their community. And it's not just the verbiage that they're using, it's the action in which they're taking. And I think that is imperative. Whenever you stand for a cause, you have to also be about that cause. You have to be about that change, and you have to be about willing to speak out, and not just speak out, but go to action. And that's where I've seen a lot of professional athletes go, and a lot of college athletes. Look, Louisville men's basketball team, just a couple of days ago, led a march because of the grand jury's decision on Breonna Taylor. And it was the entire basketball team walking across a bridge in Louisville with thousands of people behind them. And they are using their platform as a rallying cry to bring change and bring a betterment of our society. And to me, equality is not a Republican Democrat conversation. To me, equality is a human rights conversation, and we have to be able to look past someone's color of their skin, religious beliefs, and start to love each other. I know that's a utopian way of thinking. I get that, and I know that no matter what is said on TV, that there are going to be some people that are not going to understand it and are not going to be welcoming of it. But the more that we get people to see each other and hear each other and listen to each other, I think that the opportunity to love each other becomes that much greater. And I think that athletes are playing a very central role right now in not allowing this movement to lose steam, which has often been the case when we've seen these kind of pushes before. After a certain period of time, they usually stop. I don't think it's going to stop this time, because I think the athletes have taken a leadership role.
From your mouth to God's ears, Sean, I am inspired by the fact that not in my wildest dreams would I ever think that Saban would be walking with the Alabama team talking about Black Lives Matter. I mean, I think if you think about a pivotal moment in terms of the response, that is inspiring, to say the least. And certainly there has been a history of athletes standing for social justice. I mean, Jesse Owens in the 36 Olympic Games and the handful of Jewish athletes, that stood up for what was right and just during the 36, Hitler Games. Certainly 1968 with John Carlos and Tommy Smith. You mentioned Muhammad Ali, Lou Alcindor. But here's my perspective is I'm hopeful, Sean, that it is a moment that turns into a movement because this has been 400 years in the making. My mom lived through the 65 riots. I lived and worked through the 1992 riots. And as a mother of 2 Black boys, I never in my wildest dreams thought we would be having, the same, not even the same level, it's a deeper level of conversations that we are with the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many other, African-American Black, people, over a $20 counterfeit bill, over a no-knock warrant, and the calls in the fight for justice, really hit me personally as a Black woman married to a Black man with 2 Black kids who have to have that conversation with their sons. One I just shipped off to college is to make sure that you code switch if you get stopped by, just happen to get stopped by the wrong officer. I'm a military police officer in the U.S. Army. I have the utmost respect for our law enforcement, but the reality is that we're not making the decisions that we need to make to change the systems. And I'll give you a couple of statistics and an example of where this change needs to matter. Is that the home ownership rate for African Americans, for Black families, is the same as it was in 1968. Wealth, as compared to white households, for every dollar of wealth that white households have, Blacks have 10 cents and Latino families have 12 cents of wealth. And that hasn't changed since 1968. So despite the 65 riots, despite the 92 riots, and now we're in 2020 with all of these athletes and leagues standing up and saying that Black Lives Matter, that it's fair and it's just, and that, equality for all. We have a ballot proposition in California to create a split tax roll that has had an impact in our K-12 system, our health and human services system. And, businesses heretofore are saying, nope, that's not the right time. It's not the right time for us to advance that legislation that's going to drive billions of dollars into those systems that have oppressed Black and brown communities for decades, and that will really help make this moment matter. And so, Sean, to your point, I think I'm inspired by the action and the voice of the athletes in the leagues, but we have some real work to do, and we really have to roll up our sleeves to make this moment count in a way in which it's going to redirect those resources to really support those communities to be able to close that gap. And I'm also inspired by the Alliance. Certainly, the 11 professional sports teams coming together, and they said they wanted to make this moment matter. So they're putting real dollars in, significant, certainly not enough, over a 5-year initiative to really use their platforms to bring awareness to the inequities, the unfairness that has perpetuated communities of color for decades, and to really try to advance the system changes that are going to be essential for us not to be in the same place 5 or 10 years from now.
Let me ask a follow-up question regarding this, and that is that, for the longest time, there's been proponents who wanted to sort of segregate sports, and politics. Now, is this sort of the new norm in terms of athletes using their platforms, for social justice? And do you see that sort of extending to other industries, for example, the entertainment industry, or is it a nature of the demographics of the industry itself that is what would sort of generate that sort of interest?
Sean, I think, you said something, Sean, that just stayed with me and touched me, and what it is that is so special about sport, that's so transformative about sport, is that when you think about Alabama as an example, you've got Coach Saban, you've got players from all walks of life, you've got religious beliefs, some, sexual orientation, but they come together focused on one common purpose, to win games and win championships and to make each other better. So when you think about sport, my hope is that it's not a left or right, it's not a Republican or a Democrat. It's about fighting for what's fair and for what's just, and really standing up what is so special about the way in which sports brings communities together. And I think that's what we need to focus on. We're talking to the Alliance about, doing a video to support voting rights. And, some of the teams are saying, well, I don't want it to be, partisan. I don't want you to say vote Republican or vote Democrat. And so our response to that is, of course not. But we're going to say that democracy is a team sport. It doesn't matter what team you're on, but make sure you exercise your responsibility to vote, because that's what makes our democracy work. And so, my hope is that we continue doing this, but we do so in a way in which creates a safe space for multiple sides to come together around what is fair and just, and focus on those things that bind us, not what divides us. And that's what's transformational to my mind about sports.
And I do think this is going to be the new norm for athletes to use their voices in this way. I think part of it is social media has allowed that interaction and that connection, unlike any other era of sports that we've seen. I also think this, and this might be even more important, might be a little bit but companies are less likely to remove themselves from the athletes and take away their dollars down when they speak out on issues. In the past, that has been an issue because corporations were like, hey, that's political. We don't want you to do that. We're going to give you our endorsement money, but we're not endorsing you to endorse your political beliefs. And I think that there now is an understanding with a lot of major sponsors of these teams, these organizations, and these athletes themselves, that athletes have voices, they have thoughts, they have cares, they have things that impact them or impact their community or where they were born and raised. Yeah. And they're not abandoning those athletes now like they have in other eras on the financial side. And I think that is going to be something that is going to continue to be empowering to today's athletes to be able to continue to share their voice without the concern that it might impact them in that regard.
And let's be real, Sean. I mean, I think you made a comment when we talked last about, the NBA and the cost of the bubble versus the revenue that they would have lost, is that the NFL would not come out and stood for Black Lives Matter if it wasn't good for business. And there is data and statistics that shows that the fan base actually cares about these issues. It's important to them. And I think as you think about the shift in, who was protesting globally, it was a rainbow coalition of young millennials and the generations 2 or 2 that come after the millennials. Those are the consumers that are buying, and the consumers are saying, I want our teams, our leagues, our corporations to care for something. And I want them to be authentic in how they connect with the communities that I care with. And so I'm hopeful that that trend continues, because if the consumer holds teams and leagues and corporate brands accountable, I think that we'll see more positive change toward the world that we want to see.
I want to shift our focus to Los Angeles. And I wanted to ask both of you, how do each of you see the current sports landscape in Los Angeles and what effect this has on the diverse communities in greater Los Angeles area, be it economically, socially, or otherwise?
Well, I'll take that. I sit on the Los Angeles Sports Entertainment Commission. Kathy Schlossman is the president of that organization. I'm a third generation Angelino. I think it is a sport capital of the world. She hates when I say that because it makes, other sports cities feel a little, intimidated, I guess. But when you think about 11 professional sports teams, when you think about the venues that we have here, and when you think about the trajectory of the major sporting events that are coming to Los Angeles, I did note, Sean, that WrestleMania is coming in 2021. You've got the NBA All-Star, is it not the All-Star game, MLB All-Star game is reprogrammed for next year. You've got the Super Bowl in 2022. You've got the US Open of Golf in 23. You've got the World Cup in 26. And then obviously the Olympics, our third Olympic Games in 28. And so when you think about, just the impact of that on our economy, and as we think about the Play Equity Fund is a partner with the Sports Entertainment Commission on social impact. So we sit on the host committee for the legacy of the football. How can we have the Super Bowl? How can we make sure that the Super Bowl that comes to LA in 2022 has an impact across communities in diversity in hiring and contracting, in the communities and the youth that we serve and the challenges that Los Angeles faces? And that's being directed by the host committee chair, Casey Wasserman, and the team that's been put together, and looking at doing that for every major sporting event. I think beyond the economic impact and the, how do I say, the grandeur that provides to Los Angeles, I think the future for LA from a sports entertainment perspective is quite robust, and certainly looking forward to to 2021.
Yeah, I would agree. And look, you look right now in Major League Baseball, the Dodgers have the best record in Major League Baseball. The Lakers are in the NBA Finals. It's a good time to be an Angelino, especially in those two sports. But LAFC has been tremendously successful. And I think that as you look at SoFi Stadium, and I'm glad that you brought up WrestleMania because it's going to bring hundreds of millions of dollars. Vince McMahon and the crew rolling in. It's going to be great. I cannot wait. I'm going to be there. Fingers crossed that we all get to be there. But you get that rolled out, and then with SoFi Stadium, what that means for the future of other sports. Like LA has never had a place that you could house a Final Four. It does now, because in the Final Fours, they're in major stadiums that are domed. And while there is some open air in the new SoFi Stadium, that roof over the top ensures that that court is not going to have any moisture on it whatsoever, and allows you to bring potentially a Final Four, college football national championships, all of that going on. Steve Ballmer's building his new arena, which is going to only, again, increase the opportunity. So you're going to look at that new arena. You've got the Forum, you've got SoFi, you've got the Coliseum, you've got the Rose Bowl, you've got the Staples Center. There's so many great venues to house award shows, concerts, major events that will bring in tons of revenue, conventions, consumers into the LA market, that I think is essential to exactly what you said, which is it is the sports entertainment capital of the world, and it's not going to change. And I understand, look, movie productions have changed. People are going to Georgia, Canada. I get all that. I understand that there's a changing landscape there. But I think at the end of the day, people want to be in LA. They want to be in Hollywood. They want to be in Los Angeles. And that idea of LA, that image of LA, I think is going to end up shining through, because we're fortunate. SoFi Stadium was built and finished up in the middle of COVID. This stadium for the Clippers, because of Steve Ballmer, who has more money than we could ever imagine, it's being built right now. And so production isn't stopping, which means construction jobs are still going on there, which means that these stadiums are going to finish on time, which means that there's going to be more opportunities to house events throughout the course of the year in Southern California. It means more local revenue. And I think all of that is a positive, and sports is a centerpiece to all of it.
It looks like we have a couple of questions from the audience, and I'll just remind the audience that you can ask your questions in the question and answer section of this Zoom call. But one of the questions was, Sean, you mentioned this, and Renata, feel free to join in. But in terms of high school athletics, because there's a reduction in terms of high school athletic participation right now, how does that impact college recruiting for whatever sport it might be?
Immensely. I mean, that's a simple way, and it's a huge concern of mine. I feel so bad for this year's senior class, junior class, and even sophomores in high school. I think all three of those classes are going to be greatly impacted by this. Now, if you're a sophomore, there is still some time. As a freshman, I don't think, if you're a parent of a freshman, there's plenty of time. They're going to be okay. But my concern is these colleges have pushed out. There's a dead period all the way extended out to January 1. Which means they cannot go out on the road and recruit. They have not gone out on the road and recruited. There's going to be a lot of misses. But even more importantly than that is, because of the lack of play, what I've started to see at some high school levels and even in the middle school level is there are athletes that are losing interest right now in their sport that are very good athletes. The pay-for-play scheme that is youth sports, let's make no mistake about it, youth sports, there's club basketball teams that charge $4,000, $6,000 a year per kid to play. I mean, that's ridiculous. We don't live in Nebraska. There's plenty of good tournaments here and independent teams you can play for that's going to help get your kid exposure, by the way. That's just my one caveat. But it is going to impact recruiting. And the best way, and this would be my advice to any parent that is listening that has a kid that is at the high school age that wants to be recruited, if you do play in any events, record them. All right. So I know a lot of teams have gone to Arizona and are playing in events in Arizona. There's basketball tournaments that are being run by Los Angeles-based organizations in Utah over the next month or so that I'm aware of. If you're going to go play in those, record them. And don't be afraid to send that out to colleges that you may be interested in attending. You can reach out to them. They can't reach out to you. You can send that footage in and allow them to maybe have the opportunity to be seen. It is a very complicated time what I would tell any athlete, and this is what I've told my kids, is this is an opportunity. And you have to view COVID-19 in this period of time as an opportunity to work on your weaknesses. If you really want to be an elite level athlete and you want to play at the Division I level, you have to continue to work on your game. You have to continue to self-motivate. It can't come from your parents. It can't always come from your coach. It has to come from within. And so if you can see this as an opportunity to really push yourself to that next level, you're going to be so far ahead when this thing does fire up, you're going to catch a lot of people's attention quick. But if you've sat on the couch and you've played Fortnite or Call of Duty or any of those other video games, or you're doing TikToks all night long with your friends, you're probably not going to reach your end result, and you're going to allow others to pass you by. And so hard work is something that I built my entire career off of as an athlete. I was not good enough really to be a centerpiece of a UCLA basketball team. I wasn't. But I wanted to strive and play above my head and work hard to try to achieve and be part of something that was bigger than me. And I think that that's something that in today's athlete, we need to make sure that we understand. As far as a parent, that's great advice to give your kids is, if you want to be great, what are you willing to do right now? Look, a lot of us can't have kids play with friends, hang out, and you certainly should not be going to parties or doing those things, right? So what are we doing? And at the end of the day, hopefully what you're doing is saying, let me make this a positive. How can we make this a positive to keep you tied into sports? And going back to the pay for play thing, I am very concerned about our underfinanced or low income athletes that are at the youth level, that they may become disenfranchised and move away from sports. And that is something that we all have to be very aware of right now, and something that we all should be paying attention to try to figure out ways that we can keep people involved and tied in.
Yeah, and Chang, two quick things to add to that, and piggybacking on what you just said, Sean, is there's two sides of the coin, the haves and the have-nots, and the impact of COVID-19 is going to hit the have-nots the hardest. And when you think about public high schools and the budget issues that they're facing, look, LAUSD spent something like $150 million on their food distribution program. Another crisis hiding in plain sight that but for school lunches, a lot of families don't eat. And that those budget issues directly hit the athletics department at the high school level. Oakland just last year, even pre-COVID-19, was eliminated half of its sports programs because of their budget issues. And so what you see is a shift to private schools, Loyola High School, Chaminade, Oaks Christian, where you see the student athletes and the pay-to-play model, and that's leaving millions of kids on the sidelines. And so those that do have talent, can't even display those talents because they don't have a field on which to display them. I think the other point I wanted to make really quickly is, from a university perspective, from a college perspective, their sports is a revenue generator. And the COVID-19 impact of distance learning has hit their athletic department, and you're eliminating. Stanford eliminated some of its Olympic sports that may or may not come back. And so if you have a fencer or a soccer player or one of those sports that are being cut, what is the pathway to a college experience do those young athletes have? And so I think you have challenges on both sides of this coming as a result of and coming out of COVID-19, certainly the public high school level, and then also those programs that are being cut at the collegiate level that is going to leave millions of kids on the sidelines from pursuing their dreams of being an athlete.
If I could just tag that for 1 second, because you're spot on in the impact that it's going to have at so many colleges. Look, Riverside, it was announced last week, they're looking to maybe get rid of their entire athletic department. The Cal State system is staring at potentially eliminating a ton of sports. And what this means is there's still going to be major sports at the major Division I level. But the trickle-down impact of this is limiting opportunity. And anytime we start talking about limiting opportunity, that means less and less people get the opportunity to not only participate and be part of Division I athletics, but maybe more importantly is the opportunity to that education that is presented through athletics. And I use myself as an example. I was a very good high school student. I was good enough to be a full appointment at the United States Air Force Academy, but I would not have gotten into UCLA if it wasn't for my application being stamped athletic department basketball. And because of that, I got so many doors. My whole career path, everything I've enjoyed in my life, from my wife to my job, has been based on my experiences and the opportunity and connections I made through my collegiate experience. And I know that there are many of my teammates that have had the same thing. I know there's many student athletes that are non-revenue or Olympic sports that have had those same opportunities. And one of the best ways to improve where you're at, whether it's socioeconomic background, whatnot, is through education, the opportunity to network and expand out. And this is a concern of mine as we start to eliminate. Cincinnati eliminated some of their programs already. We start eliminating an opportunity. That's less and less opportunity for kids to step out of their bubble, whatever their bubble looks like, wherever they're from, and experience something different and unique and network and have opportunities present themselves to fulfill their life. And I think that's one of the things I'm very concerned about right now.
Sean, you're speaking my language. You might be careful. You might be come over and join the play equity movement and help us in our work. That's what I wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night. It's how do you really, use sport to create conditions for kids to succeed and give them those life skills that go way beyond playing on the field, but really help them build a bridgeway to success in their life. So
I'm one call away.
This is another question that was asked by someone, and this relates to the current pandemic and fairness in sports. I was watching the football game yesterday because I'm a lifelong Kansas City Chiefs fan, and they were playing in Baltimore, and the quarterback was able to draw the defense offsides, in part because there's no fans in the stands. If you're at a road game, that would never happen. And so you see a mixture, obviously you had the basketball in the bubble, but now, with whatever sport, whether it's football, depending on the locale, it could be that you have fans or you have no fans, you have some fans, that type of thing. And how do you see that in terms of the inherent sort of fairness in sports, which is supposed to be based on meritocracy?
You just said something. Me and my husband and I were having this conversation because we've been getting our fair share of sports. Can you imagine that game-winning shot in Game 2 when Anthony Davis drained a three-pointer with like seconds left on the clock? I mean, if you're in Staples Arena, you would have had 20,000 plus fans just erupt. I just want to know what that moment felt like. When it was like 20 people in the stadium cheering him on. I can't speak to the fairness because you hold your positions. That's what you're trained to do. You have a job. You scout the game. The games that they're going to play. If you get drawn off sides, I think that's fair. Hold your position.
There's benefits to it, and there's certainly downfalls to it. One is you can get pulled off sides because you can really hear the hard count of a quarterback right now. But two, if the Cowboys, even this weekend against the Seahawks, you're backed up against that end zone, even though it ended up being a safety. There is no 12th man to distract you. So you can still be able to operate your play, where if you're an opposing team going up to Seattle to play the Seahawks, most of the time you can't hear anything.
That's right.
To answer your question, though, from the Lakers' perspective, Miles Simon told me, who's the assistant coach on the Lakers, who used to be a colleague of mine at ESPN and then a competitor when he was at Arizona and I was at UCLA. He said that while it certainly was different, the joy was not different for the athlete. And that when they got back in the locker room, it was chaos after that shot was made by Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I'm sure. I have to say that this not having fans in the stand impacts the refs as well. Because just my personal opinion is that was not pass interference for the Rams game. Just saying.
Okay, but if you're going to acknowledge that wasn't pass interference, then can we also admit that was not an interception that took place? That it was possession was caught by the Bills, brought all the way down to the ground. Yeah, no, I mean, this is the fun part of sports. And this interaction right here that we're having. This is what makes sports a centerpiece to American culture and allows us to smile and laugh even in a time where we've got so much uncertainty and so much unrest in society. And I think that's the fun part of sports. And that's where, as a parent and as myself, even my employment, I try to capture that. I really want to capture that as much as I possibly can, because I think people, when they do turn to sports, it's important to hear the voices of the athletes, but it's also important that we feel normal. We have that sense of fun and that joy. When the playoffs starting today in Major League Baseball, I can't wait to turn them on after we're done here. They got 3 games on ESPN all day long. Shameless plug for my company, and can't wait to watch them.
So I have two last questions. One is regarding the 28 Olympics. What's both of your views on, that opportunity coming here to Los Angeles, and what does that mean for, whether it's the economy, whether it's, with regard to the movement that's going on right now? What's your view on that?
Well, first I'd like to say, thank goodness we opted for 28 instead of 24. It gives us more years. It gives Casey and the team 4 more years to raise the $6+ billion to put on the games. I think it's just yet another moment, of LA being the sports capital of the world. I mean, when you harken back to the '84 Olympic Games and how that united and brought together a city, I like to say in LA County, there's 88 cities within LA County. Traffic is horrendous. We all seem to stay in our little triangle. And that was a moment where Los Angeles and Southern California came together to put on one of the most, the world's most exciting sporting events. And I think unifying around that, we have the opportunity to do that again in 28. I think it's going to be a different type of Olympics. I mean, I think the focus on, Sean, to your point of, having so many, we have an abundance of venues. In '84, we only had to build 3 new facilities. In 2028, we don't have to build any. There's 3 temporary facilities and some renovations that are done, but we're benefiting from the riches of stadium and arena and facilities. And so there's going to be really an emphasis on the athletes. There's going to be an emphasis on sort of uniting what is so unique about Los Angeles. And when you think about the brand launch just recently, I just thought that was brilliant when you have influencers and icons to the Southern California, to the California economy, and to the world, and to sports and entertainment, coming up with their version of the A, and that the, folks who are looking at, you've got to go into is like, what was that, A that, I forget the woman that wears she's the Grammy winner this year, I forget her name, but, what was her thinking around what her A means? You dive into the arts and the culture and the entertainment world and really celebrating, which is so wonderful and so unique and so, so special about Los Angeles. Casey says, as we were bidding for the 28 Olympic Games, Los Angeles is the world in one city. And I think our opportunity to celebrate the fact that we have the largest Korean population outside of Korea, the largest Chinese population out of China, the largest Thai community outside of Thailand, so you can go on and on and on. And to be able to celebrate the richness of what makes Los Angeles so unique. I just get excited about thinking about it. It's still 8 years away, but it's a blink of an eye. And I think it's going to, again, put a spotlight on Los Angeles as the greatest city in the world.
Yeah, I would agree because of everything you just said. The multicultural aspects of our community, I think, is going to be on full display. And I believe that it's going to be a coming together once again of Los Angeles being a beacon of light. And to the social justice aspect, I mean, look, I know I'm naive in saying this, but I hope that by the time we get to 2028 that we've made progress. I don't anticipate that it's eradicated. I think that would be just ignorant to believe. But I would hope that we have made massive strides and that this movement that is going on now continues to gain momentum and continues to see a betterment of our society. And I think Los Angeles, there's no better city to be put on display to shine a light on the improvements hopefully made by 2028 than Los Angeles. And the Olympic Games, for what it stands for, what it means, the celebration of globalization of where we're at and the storylines of the athletes. I think that, as you said, it's going to be the focal point on a backdrop that no one's ever seen before. And look, we aren't reinventing the wheel. We're not going to have these stadiums like you see in Brazil. Unfortunately, the aftermath of the Olympics sometimes can leave communities, where you have stadiums literally falling apart right now in Rio because they're never used for anything else. Going back to sports entertainment capital of the world, infrastructure's here, facilities are here. I think it's going to be a massive, massive success. And not only that is the ramifications of coming out of COVID. Look, we've taken an economic hit as a city. We've addressed that a couple of times in our talk this afternoon. But the revenue, hopefully, that's going to come in, and the travel and the tourism and the people that are going to be experiencing Los Angeles, and some of them for the first time, is they're going to figure out what we already know by living here is they want to come back and they want more of Los Angeles. And that's coming from a guy that was born and raised in Northern California. You can't hold that against me. But look, it's a special place. And I think that display of 2028 is going to be outstanding. And I'm glad that we do have that time to kind of forward ourselves, not only coming out of COVID, but also within social justice and this movement, and try to make some improvements.
Yeah, and Sean, to one other thing to add on that is, like, when you think about the Olympics in Los Angeles in 28, you know, it's going to be the world's greatest home game. And when you think about when we won the Olympic bid and the athletes who are right now, you know, training in soccer or golf or fencing or basketball, you pick a sport, is that for the first time in a long time, they can aspire to be in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. But I think it's incumbent upon all of those watching, and incumbent upon all of us who have children and care about youth sports, care about justice, care about equality, is to make sure that we're doing what we can to ensure that all kids have equal access to sport and the transformative power that sports has. Because otherwise, I don't think that we're going to give a fair opportunity for the kids who are on the have-not side to be able to aspire to be an Olympic athlete in the games in 2028.
Well, one final question for both of you, and that is, what do each of you foresee as to when we might get to some semblance of normality and what that new normal might look like?
I got no idea. I'm not Dr. Fauci. Look,
I think this is the new normal. We're gonna have to learn to live with COVID-19 for the foreseeable future.
yeah, we're gonna have to live with it. I hope that there's a vaccine that can allow it to at least be minimalized, so that we can go back to seeing some of these stadiums that are so beautiful, packed with people, so that we can see movie theaters with people inside them watching and enjoying what Hollywood is able to produce, so that actors on sets feel comfortable and confident that they can fulfill their roles just as much as athletes, whether it's at the youth sports, college, or professional ranks, feel confident that their talents and what they're displaying and the entertainment that they're providing for fans at home isn't putting them in harm's way. And that's when we get to that point, that's when I'm really going to feel a lot better about where we're at and where we're going.
And right now, I'm just happy I can go to the nail salon on Saturday.
Well, it looks like we're out of time for our panel discussion, Sports in the Era of COVID. I'd like to thank our guest speakers, Renata, President and CEO of the LA84 Foundation and President of the Play Equity Fund, and Sean, ESPN sports analyst. They gave us their personal perspectives of the sports environment during these transitional times. And thank you both. It's a wonderful discussion, and you know, the things that both of you are doing in this community, and you know, for, you know, cancer research and everything. I applaud you both, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And I want to thank the audience for joining us today. Today's Added Value Mptf PAN webinar. We hope you can join us on October 28th for our fourth quarter PAN presentation on the political landscape of the 2020 presidential election. Our guest speaker will be John Emerson, Vice Chairman of the Capital Group International. Kathy will be sending out more information soon. Thank you again, and be well, everyone.